Thanks, Laura. Appreciate the introduction. Okay, you are definitely brave souls coming out at 9:30 in the morning to hear a guy talk about numbers. Some of this is going to seem a little bit repetitive for some of you that have seen the past presentations, but I got a few twists along the way that I hope you guys will enjoy. Okay, farm management guy, got to talk about numbers. We really believe that doing your cost of production, whatever your system, is the only way to have a starting point for profitability. We are big believers in calculating your costs on a per bushel, not just on a per acre basis. You don't sell acres, you sell bushels. Each year is different. You've got to do the hard work of planning for prosperity. The profit is there, you just got to plan for it. Okay, the 2019 organic crop production cost is currently on the website. It may or may not look like this, depending on if they've actually upgraded the cover version that I sent them. It could be this one or the new one. It is a challenge to find it, as always with our website. Big believer if you want to try to find it, and actually a copy of this presentation. If you Google MBAG production cost, find the production economics link, click on that, then go to the cost of production link there. Then you'll find, again, the organic COP and a copy of the presentation there. Okay, briefly what I'm going to go through is the usual COP summary and analysis points. Going to still talk a little bit about agri-insurance or risk. Along the way, we're going to be doing the organic conventional comparisons. The twist at the end, I'm going to talk about land payments and land values. Land is such a huge issue in the ag industry these days. And a quick couple of comments about a new resource we've got at the bitter end. Okay, I am from the government and I'm here to help you. Very calm, reassuring words, I'm sure. Free advice might be worth just that. Again, I realize that. But I don't take myself very seriously, but I do take my work very seriously. So if you have exceptions or want to start the conversation or debate, please feel free to do that. You will not offend me. Again, discuss the work, have at her. Okay, what's coming for 2019? Haven't got a clue. That seems to be the age-old thing. No crystal ball here. We've got a lot of uncertainty and instability in the world these days, whether it's trade issues, political issues, pick an issue, the Canadian dollar bouncing around. It's really hard to figure out where some of those things are going and how those things are going to affect your business in terms of market prices and what you should grow. Climate, still not sure if we're looking at average or wet. We've got some disparity on the weather forecasters for the next year. It is definitely getting harder to say of Mr. Reaper in the rearview mirror these days. I had to do just one. Okay, now here, let's get into some of the meat of the matter here. The organic crop production costs for 2019. The operating costs here are in the blue bars, and for most of the crops, they're ranging somewhere between $225 to $250 per acre. The fixed costs are in the red bars there, sitting at $122, and we've got labor sitting at $70 per acre. So we've got a total cost range of $425 to $450 an acre for the slate of organic crops coming out of the budget. Now, quick comparison back to the conventional side. Operating cost range is a little less at $175 to $250. The exception there is corn sticking up there, kind of on the left side middle. Total cost range $350 to $425. So again, a little less cost, but that's kind of how they compare. Now, for the analysis deck that I'm doing here today, kind of some of the background numbers that you need to know, yield and price that I'm putting in. On the organic side, hemp, 520 pounds at $1.40. Wheat, 35 bushels at 18. Winter wheat, 45 at $13. Flax sitting at 15.5 at 36. Oats, 80 at 6. And soybeans, 15 at 25. Flipping to the conventional side, again, straight out of the conventional COP, we've got canola at 40 bushels at $11. Hard wheat sitting at 55 at $6.75 a bushel. Winter wheat, 67 bushels at 5. Flax at 24 and at $12.75. And 105 oats at $3.35. So these are the numbers that I'm going to kind of use forward for the analysis points. If you don't like my numbers, we always say change them, put in your own numbers. Okay, so that deck of costs, those yields and prices, what does that mean in terms of profitability? So the top 6 organic crops for 2019 have got gross revenues ranging from $400 to $600 per acre. And the margin over total cost, or the net profit, again, the bottom line, the number you really want to pay attention to is in the green bar there, and that is sitting, again, mostly positive with the exception of soybeans, at $45 to $250 of net profit per acre. Soybeans are sitting at an $82 loss. So the most profitable crops are hemp, wheat, and winter wheat, and the least, again, is soybeans. Now, a quick comparison, again, as apples to apples as I can make it, with the exception of kind of inserting canola for hemp. We're looking at gross revenues of $325 to $425. But the net profit, again, in the green bars, is much tighter on the conventional side. We're looking at a negative 40 to a positive of 46. It is really key to point out that these profitability analysis are extremely dependent on yield and prices, whether it's organic or conventional. So again, the most profitable crops on the conventional are canola, soybeans, and oats in this deck, and the least are flax, winter wheat, and wheat. And again, kind of a reminder, cash flow does not equal profit. Okay, one of the calculations that I've been doing this year in presentations is just laying out a break-even calculation. It's surprising how simple these calculations are, but how misunderstood or underused they truly are. So break-even price is simply cost divided by yield. So for 2019 organic wheat, cost is $4.42 divided by 35 bushels. That gives you a break-even price of $12.63 a bushel. So that's the break-even on organic wheat. So when we look at kind of the full deck here of the break-even prices for the organic crops for 2019, again, the break-even over total cost in the green bars. The notable ones here are wheat at $12.63, just mentioned, flax at $28.28, oats at $5.43, and soybeans at $30.48. And kind of a quick comparison back on the conventional side, the break-even for wheat is sitting, again, over total cost in the green bar, sitting at $6.99, which is a pretty big price. Flax at $14.41, oats at $3.25, and soybeans at $9.79. Much tighter path to profitability on the conventional side. The other break-even calculation, break-even yield, is cost divided by price. So again, 2019 organic wheat, just for example, is total cost of $4.42 divided by $18 gives you a break-even of 24.5 bushels, break-even yield of 24.5 bushels per acre. Key point here that I should have mentioned on the other slide is, do not forget that break-even is zero profit. So knowing your break-even is good, but no profit is bad, in my opinion. Okay, next up here, break-even yield over total cost here on the organic side is sitting in the blue bars. The notable ones here in this slide are wheat at 25, flax at 12, oats at 72, and soybeans at 18. Again, generally fairly reasonable. On the conventional side, in comparison, wheat is break-even is sitting at 57 bushels, flax at 27, oats at 102, and soybeans at 34. Those are pretty healthy yields to break even. A little bit different there. Now, to try to drill a little bit deeper on the break-even yield discussion, and again, this is on the conventional side here first. We really, in farm management, want you guys to try to compare your target or average yield as a percentage of your break-even yields. So anything over 100%, like over the black bar there across the middle, is good, and under 100% is not good. The lower the number in an analysis like this really gives this first indication of risk that the producers are under. So here, the 40 bushel canola that we've got in this analysis is exceeding the break-even by 4%. The 55 bushel wheat is under by 3%, and the 105 bushel oats is exceeding by 3%. This is the NASCAR analogy. This gives you the first indication of how close to the wall you're running with your farm operation. Now, on to the organic chart. Little bit different story here. Hemp, the 520-pound hemp is exceeding the break-even by 54%. 35 bushel wheat is exceeding by 43%. The 80 bushel oats is exceeding by 10%, and the 15 bushel soybeans is under by 18%. When you do an analysis piece like this, when you compare it back to the previous slide and then look at this one, when I talk about risk and how close you are, what production system do you think is under more inherent risk to the producer? And assuming and managing that risk is critical for all producers. This gives you a really quick indication of risk. Another one of my favorite analysis pieces is the stress test. Drop yield and price, dropping price by 10% and yield by 5%. Again, it definitely tightens up the profitability here. Again, the profit in the green bars. Now with that change, oats and soybeans are no longer profitable, but the rest do remain profitable. And if we do the same analysis on the conventional side, things look much more stressful when we're doing the stress test, with net profit being negative for all crops. Showing the elasticity of crops under stress and challenges is extremely important for your crop selection, your management, and looking at your production systems. This really highlights that production wrecks, which can happen in both, market corrections, even small ones, can have a big impact on your profitability. So this is something key, I think, for producers to do. Okay, switching into the agri-insurance analysis. Again, on the conventional side, what I'm doing here is just looking at the percent of premium per acre as a percentage of the coverage. So in this example here, the 80% coverage for canola is sitting at 1.8%. Wheat is 2.5%, and soybeans are 4.8%. So the higher this percentage, MASC is suggesting higher levels of risk. Now these are 2018 premiums. The premiums for 2019 are not out yet. The minister has just announced changes to crop insurance that is coming on various organic crops, but I haven't seen any of the numbers yet. So when we look at what this agri-insurance means, and this is again on the conventional side first, 80% coverage is going to cover 115 to 140% of operating costs. So all the operating costs are covered on the conventional side, but only covering 60 to 80% of total cost, which is the green line there in the middle. Different producers are going to have different insurance needs, and this is kind of me jumping on the soapbox saying you insure liabilities, not revenues. So when we look at conventional, what costs are not covered, it's covering all of the operating costs, so there's no blue bar shown here, so what's left is fixed and labor, totaling somewhere between $83 to $143 an acre of costs not covered. Again, this is another indication of risk on your farm. So now flipping into the organic insurance, the only ones here that, which is quite a different story here, by the way. The organic ones here are wheat, winter wheat, flax, and oats, and unfortunately in this slide, hemp and soybeans are conventional coverage. The 80% coverage for most of the organic crops is hovering around 10 to 11% premium as a percentage of coverage. So again, it's more expensive coverage for what you're getting. But again, this again is based on 2018. I haven't got 2019 yet. So what does it cover? Well, the 80% organic agri-insurance is covering 68 to 78% of operating costs there in the red line, but only 35 to 44% of total cost. Again, it is showing more risk exposed on the organic side. And when we look at costs not covered, we definitely have got more costs not covered on the organic side. We've got operating costs not covered in the blue bar, and fixed and labor in the red and green. So those costs not covered are somewhere between 247 and 281 of total cost. So again, that is the risk that you're exposed to. Okay, on to the different stuff. Presentations I've been doing this winter, I've been going through the 7 deadly rules of profitability, and a big one is land. So I'm kind of skipping through the list here and heading straight to land. And this is really a big deal for farms to secure land base that they need. And when I look at the conventional side, we do see a lot of high equity farms, which is good. And high equity farms are obviously more competitive for land. And they definitely tend to be more resilient when it comes to potential rising interest rates. But we're going to dig into the land issue, first on the conventional, then compare back to organic. Okay, one of the calculations I do is a break-even land payment. So I look at what is the break-even amount of money in the crop budget. In this case, I'm just using 3 crops, canola, wheat, and soybeans, to look at what they can afford to pay for land on a per acre basis. So the break-even number there is sitting at $77. Again, I'm not a big fan of break-even, so I'm going to pull $25 of profit out, and that's going to drop that number to $52 an acre. So that's what you can pay for land on the conventional side. If you take a 75% equity farm with a 20-year note at 5 1/4, the break profit, with the $25 pulled out, that break-even land value is $2,531 an acre. And that's fairly representative of a lot of the land in the area, the Killarney-Minnedosa corridor. But the downside is, if you want to go buy that $3,000 or $2,500 land, the payment, again, at 5 1/4 for 20 years, is going to be running somewhere around $250 an acre. So I just calculated the break-even payment at 52, or break profit, at 52, or the break-even at 77. We have a bit of a problem. So does it make sense to buy this $3,000 land on the conventional side? Well, the old rule of thumb was looking at gross revenue times 6, which is in the green line there, giving you that number of $2,500 an acre. And the red line there is gross revenue times 8 for the reality point, giving you a number of $3,200. So on the conventional side, okay, passes the gross revenue test. Theoretically, we're in the game. This should make sense. So when we drill a little bit deeper and figure out, okay, so what does that mean? So to make that $250 payment, we've only got $52 to do that, so we're going to have to put up additional land. So if we put up 2 additional paid-for acres, so we're going to put them at risk with 0 profit for 20 years, that's going to show a land value of $2,800, or gross revenue amount of gross times 6.9. If we put 3 additional acres up to make the payment, the red line there at the top is going to show a land value of $3,700, or gross times 9.1. And that's getting outside of the realm of reality. So that's really the story of how tight the land game is on the conventional side. And what do equity and risk really mean? Well, when I talk about the $77 land payment and talk about needing more acres to pay for that, what that means is you want to buy that 1 acre in the blue square on the pie, you're going to have to put up 3 more acres to buy that. And are you comfortable risking that much land? And the young people, no problem, let's spend mom and dad's money. This is awesome, here we go. But it really highlights the amount of risk that system is under. Now, back to the organic calculations and how different they are going to show. So what this is, for that same deck of, now I'm going to do 6 crops, again, with good profitability to lower profitability. The break-even land payment, again, how much you've got left over to pay for land with all of these crops, is $178 an acre. And if we do pull a bit of profit out, the $25, the break profit number is $153. What this means now, when you calculate the break-even land value again, but I'm going to do it now for a 25% equity farm, basically a low equity farm for 20 years at 5 1/4%. That break-even land value is $2,893. And that's very similar to the conventional side, but that was based on a 75% equity farm. That is a huge, huge difference. Now, the reason I find this piece of analysis interesting is low equity farms, again, tend to be young producers. So if young producers are trying to get into farming and have no equity, when you can find something that's more profitable, this might be the way to actually pay for land. So if we flip the organic break-even land payments, again, up to 75% equity, say we've got a strong equity farm, the break-even land value that an organic farm can pay for these deck of crops is now $7,500 an acre. This shows the true impact of profitability on the ability to pay for land. So tell me, what system is going to be more competitive when it comes to buying land? And this is a huge piece. So back to the assessment of risk. So the conventional crops are likely going to be requiring you to do 2 to 3 acres of additional paid-for acres over the 20 years with no profit to make the payment. Organic crops can be quite different. If you put a quarter of an acre of additional paid-for land, the green line there on the bottom is showing a land value of $2,700 or gross revenue times 4.9, under the reality range that I talked about earlier. If you're willing to put half an acre of paid-for land at risk, the red line is going to show a land value of $3,200 or gross times 5.8. This is a relatively low-risk system. It's at low risk, especially to mom and dad, the ones with the equity, if young guys are trying to get into the business. But it really highlights the equity and risk and what they mean. So if you're going to try to buy that 1 acre and put it into organic production, the blue part of the pie there, it needs an extra, and what that means is an extra third of an additional acre of paid-for land to get to the 25% equity. It's significantly less risk. So dealing with that whole land equation is certainly a challenging situation for sure. Okay, so after running through, again, a bunch of numbers very quickly, a bunch of charts, I realized that I really want to highlight that the more accurate your numbers are, the greater the chance you have for profitability. Doing the hard work of numbers is a great link to profitability. You have to know how the changes to profitability, again, profitability is huge, and how they can affect your farm's competitiveness and resiliency. Those are huge. And you have to know the risks and rewards of your farming operation. Because if you want to be profitable and pay for land, that is something you're going to have to do. So you do you and be rewarded. Nobody said this business was simple, far from it. Now, a couple of quick comments about a new resource that we have done to try to help deal with the rental side of the game is a resource that we've called Rent Plan. And it essentially is doing 2 very basic calculations. And I'm not going to do an example here, we don't have enough time, but it does a production cost method of calculating land rental. And it's essentially taking gross revenue, taking off operating costs, labor, equipment, storage, and a producer profit expectations to calculate the maximum rental amount from your farm. And when we do the calculation on the conventional side, I calculate a $60 number when we pull dollars out of the crop COP, and the organic side is going to have a significantly higher number because of the amount of residual left over that could be paid for land. Again, competitiveness. So we got a few other things in the farm management toolbox to help out producers, whatever the system. Crop plan is certainly one, and the good old standard of farm plan, and a lot of other tools in the box that hopefully will help you run your farms. So if you, is that my cue to quit? If you have any other questions, I hide in plain sight in downtown Clarny, Manitoba. I will be hanging out at the farm management booth a little bit today. You can pick up copies of the organic COP there. Again, always welcome to take questions at the office or later. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming out.
Thanks, Roy. So we got about 6 minutes. If any of you have some questions, just stick up your hand. Because the math was so easy?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear me. I'll yell.
No, I can hear you.
So with organic, you can't get a cash crop off every year. So how are you working that into your calculations? You got to pay rent costs every year.
Yes. If you look at the organic cost of production, what you're going to see is in there we've got 2 additional calculations built in. One is going to be a green manure plow down that has to be part of the rotation. So we've got costs in there to pay for that, including the value of land in that year that is spread back over the other years. And there's also a compost application cost built into the budget. Again, those are my numbers that we've put in there, and I would encourage you to put in your numbers of what you feel green manure costs, your land cost, and that will be then applied back to those other organic crops in the rotation. And that's one of the reasons why the total overall costs, when I kind of lay them out quickly, are higher than conventional is you've got that, and I don't want to use the word unproductive year with the green manure plow down, but the costs of that without the associated revenue are then applied to the other costs. Yes?
So you calculated that green manure year as 1 in 2 or 1 in 3 or 1 in 4? Like how have you calculated that on your cost?
I might screw this up, but I think it's 1 in 4. Does that? Yeah, okay. Anyways, that is something that Laura and I debated back in the day of how we accounted for that. But it is definitely part of the cost accounting. The numbers have to come from somewhere. The bills got to get paid. Nothing else? You're way too easy on me. Or David is too polite, one of the two. Oh, yes. Yeah. If you want to, go ahead.
Like the cost of production, the cost of the seed of that year would more or less be accounted for in the model, but you would have to add in the revenue that you're getting off your livestock or the live weight gain would be probably in, if you put your own numbers into that formula, that would be the revenue that you would collect. So you still would account for the cost of the seed, but the harvest you get off those acres would be the live weight gain of the cattle.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. The only concern I've got is not from the dollar point of view, it's from a production point of view, which I'm not necessarily equipped to answer. But if something affects the nutrient cycling of the green manure, again, some of that gets hauled off by the cattle, that might reduce the effectiveness of the green manure for subsequent crops. And no, it's all good? Okay. Yeah. Well, that I know. That's my only concern, because the nutrients do have to come from somewhere. Okay, we good? Okay. Thanks, everyone.